Marcus Thompson wiped the sweat from his forehead as he watched his 8-year-old daughter Emma struggle with her breathing exercises on the hospital bed. The beeping machines around them had become a familiar soundtrack over the past 3 years. Emma had been diagnosed with severe asthma when she was 5, and since then, their lives had revolved around emergency room visits, expensive medications, and sleepless nights filled with worry. As a single father working 2 jobs to make ends meet, Marcus found himself constantly torn between his responsibilities at work and caring for Emma. His day job as a maintenance technician at a local manufacturing plant barely covered their basic expenses, while his evening shifts at a grocery store helped pay for Emma's medical bills. The traditional inhalers prescribed by doctors were expensive and often ineffective during Emma's severe attacks. Worse yet, Emma frequently forgot to use her inhaler properly or lost track of when to take her medication. During one particularly frightening episode, Marcus sat in the hospital waiting room at 3 a.m, watching other families deal with similar struggles. He noticed how many children and elderly patients seemed confused about their medication schedules or had difficulty using their inhalers correctly. That night, an idea began forming in his mind. What if there was a device that could remind patients when to take their medication and help them use it properly? Marcus had always been good with his hands and had a natural curiosity about how things worked. In high school, he had excelled in shop class and electronics, but college had been impossible due to financial constraints. Now driven by his desperation to help Emma and other patients like her, he decided to channel his mechanical skills into creating something that could make a real difference. He started spending his few free hours researching medical devices online and visiting the local library. To read about respiratory treatments, Marcus learned about smart technology, Bluetooth connectivity, and mobile applications. The more he researched, the more convinced he became that he could create a smart inhaler system that would revolutionize how patients managed their respiratory conditions. The concept was simple, yet innovative. His device would be an attachment that could fit onto existing inhalers, equipped with sensors to detect when the medication was used. It would connect to a smartphone app that would send reminders, track usage patterns, and even alert family members or doctors if doses were missed. Most importantly, it would provide real-time feedback to ensure patients were using their inhalers correctly, maximizing the effectiveness of each dose. Marcus began sketching his ideas on napkins during his lunch breaks and spending his evenings after Emma fell asleep working on rough prototypes in their small garage. He used parts from old electronics he found at thrift stores and borrowed tools from neighbors. Emma became his most enthusiastic supporter, offering suggestions and testing early versions of the device. Though many of his initial attempts failed completely, after 6 months of trial and error, Marcus had created a working prototype that successfully tracked inhaler usage and sent data to a basic smartphone app he had taught himself to develop using free online tutorials. The device was rough around the edges, held together with electrical tape and housed in a plastic container he had modified, but it worked. More importantly, it had already begun helping Emma manage her condition better. The real test came during Emma's next asthma attack. Instead of panicking and using her inhaler incorrectly multiple times, the device guided her through proper technique while simultaneously alerting Marcus, who was at work. The app showed him exactly when she had used her medication and whether she had done it correctly. For the first time in years, Marcus felt like they had some control over Emma's condition. Encouraged by this success, Marcus began researching how to patent his invention and bring it to market. He discovered that the medical device industry was highly regulated and dominated by large corporations with massive research budgets. The patent process alone would cost thousands of dollars he did not have, and getting FDA approval seemed like an impossible mountain to climb for someone working 2 jobs just to survive. Despite these challenges, Marcus was determined to pursue his invention. He started reaching out to local business development centers and small business associations, seeking advice on how to move forward. Most people he spoke with were polite but skeptical. They questioned whether someone without a medical or engineering background could create something that established companies had not already developed. Marcus also began documenting Emma's improvement using his device. Her emergency room visits had decreased significantly, and her overall quality of life had improved dramatically. She was sleeping better, participating more in school activities, and seemed less anxious about her condition. These results gave Marcus the confidence to believe that his invention could help thousands of other patients facing similar struggles. He started attending local inventor meetups and small business networking events, carrying his prototype in a worn backpack and pitching his idea to anyone who would listen. The responses were mixed. Some people were intrigued by the concept, but doubted his ability to compete with established medical device companies. Others dismissed the idea entirely, suggesting that if it were viable, major pharmaceutical companies would have already developed it. The rejection was discouraging, but Marcus refused to give up. He began researching venture capital firms and angel investors who might be interested in funding his project. However, most required extensive business plans, market research, and professional presentations that were beyond his current capabilities. As a single father working 2 jobs, Marcus struggled to find the time and resources needed to meet these requirements. Meanwhile, Emma continued to thrive using her father's invention. Her teachers noticed her improved attendance and participation in class. Her doctor was amazed by the detailed usage data Marcus could provide during appointments, which helped optimize Emma's treatment plan. Word began to spread in their small community about the device Marcus had created for his daughter. Local news outlets started showing interest in Marcus's story. A reporter from the community newspaper wrote a small article about the single father who had invented a medical device to help his daughter. The article mentioned his struggles to find funding and support for bringing the invention to market. While the coverage was limited, it represented Marcus's first public recognition of his work. As Marcus continued refining his prototype and gathering documentation of its effectiveness, he remained hopeful that the right opportunity would present itself. He knew that his invention had the potential to help countless patients manage their respiratory conditions more effectively, but he also understood that the path from garage prototype to market-ready medical device would be long and challenging. Little did he know that his persistence was about to intersect with circumstances that would change everything. Dr. Sarah Chen had built MedTech Innovations into one of the most respected medical device companies in the country through 15 years of careful decision-making and strategic investments. Her corner office on the 32nd floor overlooked the city skyline, but she rarely had time to enjoy the view. As CEO, her days were filled with board meetings, investor calls, and reviews of potential new products that could help her company maintain its competitive edge in the rapidly evolving healthcare technology market. The company's success had come from focusing on proven technologies and working with established research institutions. Dr. Chen had a strict policy about evaluating new inventions. They needed to come from credentialed inventors with proper documentation, extensive testing data, and preferably some form of institutional backing. This approach had served MedTech Innovations well, helping them avoid costly mistakes while building a portfolio of successful products. When Marcus's initial inquiry email arrived in her assistant's inbox, it followed the same path as dozens of similar messages each week. The subject line read, "Revolutionary Smart Inhaler System, Seeking Partnership," and the message described a device created by a maintenance technician to help his daughter manage her asthma. Dr. Chen's assistant, following established protocols, sent a polite rejection email explaining that the company only worked with established research partners and required extensive clinical data before considering any new products. Marcus received the rejection within 2 days of sending his email. The message was professional but firm, stating that MedTech Innovations appreciated his interest but could not move forward without proper clinical trials and institutional partnerships. For Marcus, this rejection was particularly disappointing because MedTech Innovations was one of the leading companies in respiratory medical devices, exactly the type of partner he needed to bring his invention to market. Dr. Chen never saw Marcus's original email or learned about his invention. Her time was consumed with expanding the company's presence in international markets and developing next-generation versions of their existing product line. The company had recently invested heavily in a new research facility and was focused on projects that promised significant returns on investment within predictable timeframes. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his efforts to find support for his invention. He applied for small business grants and reached out to other medical device companies, but the responses were consistently similar. Everyone wanted to see clinical data, regulatory approvals, and professional endorsements that Marcus could not provide without significant funding. It seemed like an impossible catch-22 situation. He needed money to get the approvals required to attract money. The breakthrough Marcus had been hoping for came from an unexpected source. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a pulmonologist at the regional medical center where Emma received treatment, had been following Marcus's progress with interest. She had witnessed firsthand how Emma's condition had improved since using her father's device, and the detailed usage data Marcus provided during appointments had proven invaluable for adjusting Emma's treatment plan. Dr. Walsh decided to conduct an informal study with several of her other young patients whose parents were willing to try Marcus's device. She could not conduct official clinical trials without proper approvals, but she could gather observational data about how the device performed in real-world conditions. Over 3 months, she documented improvements in medication adherence, proper inhaler technique, and overall symptom management. Among the children using Marcus's Invention, the results were impressive enough that Dr. Walsh decided to present her findings at a regional conference on pediatric respiratory care. Her presentation, titled Real-World Applications of Smart Inhaler Technology, highlighted the potential benefits of devices that could provide real-time feedback and usage tracking. While she could not make specific product recommendations, her presentation generated significant interest among attendees. Dr. Chen was not present at this conference, as her focus remained on larger industry events and strategic partnerships. However, several physicians who attended Dr. Walsh's presentation were connected to medtech innovations through various professional relationships. The buzz around smart inhaler technology began to circulate within medical circles, but it had not yet reached the executive level at major medical device companies. Marcus remained unaware of Dr. Walsh's advocacy efforts. He continued working his 2 jobs while spending every spare moment refining his invention. He had managed to create several improved prototypes and had begun the expensive process of filing preliminary patent applications. The financial strain was enormous, but Emma's continued improvement motivated him to persevere despite the mounting challenges. During this time, Dr. Chen was dealing with her own personal challenges. Her 12-year-old daughter, Lily, had always been healthy and active, participating in soccer, swimming, and other sports with enthusiasm. Lily was Dr. Chen's pride and joy, a bright student who shared her mother's interest in science and medicine. Despite her demanding career, Dr. Chen made every effort to attend Lily's games and school events, treasuring their time together. The first signs of trouble appeared during Lily's soccer season. She began experiencing shortness of breath during practices and games, initially dismissing it as normal fatigue from increased physical activity. Dr. Chen, though concerned, initially attributed Lily's symptoms to the higher intensity of middle school sports compared to her previous recreational leagues. However, when Lily woke up one night gasping for air and complaining of chest tightness, Dr. Chen immediately took her to the emergency room. After extensive testing, the diagnosis was clear. Lily had developed asthma, likely triggered by a combination of environmental factors and genetic predisposition. The irony was not lost on Dr. Chen that she ran a company developing respiratory medical devices. Yet she had not recognized the early signs of asthma in her own daughter. The pediatric pulmonologist prescribed a standard treatment regimen including daily controller medications and a rescue inhaler for acute symptoms. Dr. Chen approached Lily's condition with the same methodical precision she applied to business decisions, researching treatment options and ensuring they had access to the best specialists available. Despite having access to the most advanced medical care and the latest inhaler technologies, Lily struggled with medication adherence. Like many children her age, she frequently forgot to take her daily medications and sometimes used her rescue inhaler incorrectly during stressful situations. Dr. Chen found herself in the unfamiliar position of feeling helpless as she watched her daughter struggle with a chronic condition. The demands of managing Lily's asthma began affecting Dr. Chen's work schedule. She found herself leaving important meetings early to pick up Lily from school when symptoms flared up, and she started working from home more frequently to monitor her daughter's condition. The irony of running a medical device company while feeling frustrated by the limitations of existing respiratory treatment options was not lost on her. Dr. Chen began paying closer attention to her company's respiratory device division, looking for ways to improve existing products or develop new solutions that could help patients like Lily manage their conditions more effectively. She started asking her research teams about innovations in smart medical devices and patient compliance technologies, areas that had previously been lower priorities for the company. This personal experience was beginning to shift Dr. Chen's perspective on what types of innovations might be most valuable to patients and families dealing with chronic respiratory conditions. However, she remained focused on solutions that could emerge from her company's established research partnerships and development processes, unaware that the exact type of device she was beginning to envision already existed in Marcus Thompson's garage. The annual State Innovation Summit was the kind of event that Marcus Thompson had only read about in business magazines. Held at the city's convention center, it brought together entrepreneurs, investors, and industry leaders to showcase cutting-edge technologies and discuss emerging trends. The registration fee alone was more than Marcus made in a week at his maintenance job, but Dr. Jennifer Walsh had managed to get him a spot in the expo hall through her connections with the medical professionals track. Marcus arrived at the convention center carrying his latest prototype in a borrowed briefcase, wearing his only suit that he had bought years ago for job interviews. The scale of the event was overwhelming. Hundreds of booths displayed everything from artificial intelligence software to advanced manufacturing equipment. Most exhibitors had professional displays, printed banners, and teams of representatives in matching polo shirts. Marcus had a card table, a handmade poster board, and a collection of his prototypes arranged on a folded towel. Despite feeling out of place, Marcus was determined to make the most of this opportunity. He had prepared a simple demonstration showing how his device tracked inhaler usage and provided real-time feedback through his smartphone app. Emma had helped him practice his presentation, timing him with a stopwatch and suggesting ways to make his explanation clearer and more engaging. The first few hours of the expo were discouraging. Most attendees walked past Marcus's table without stopping, drawn instead to the flashier displays with professional marketing materials. Those who did pause to listen were polite but skeptical. Several people questioned whether there was really a market for such a device, pointing out that existing inhalers were already effective when used properly. Others wondered why he had not partnered with an established medical device company from the beginning. Marcus persevered, refining his pitch with each interaction and learning to anticipate common questions. He began focusing on the human story behind his invention, explaining how his daughter's struggles had motivated him to create something that could help other families facing similar challenges. This approach resonated more with visitors, and by midday, he was having longer, more substantive conversations about his device's potential applications. Meanwhile, across town, Dr. Sarah Chen was dealing with another crisis related to Lily's asthma management. Despite having access to the best medical care available, Lily had experienced a severe attack during the night that required an emergency room visit. The incident occurred because Lily had forgotten to take her controller medication for several days and had used her rescue inhaler incorrectly. When symptoms began escalating, sitting in the hospital waiting room while Lily received treatment, Dr. Chen felt frustrated by the limitations of current medical technology. The inhalers her company manufactured were sophisticated devices, but they provided no feedback about whether patients were using them correctly or consistently. There was no way for parents or doctors to monitor medication adherence without relying on patients to self-report, which was notoriously unreliable, especially with children and teenagers. Dr. Chen had planned to spend the day reviewing quarterly reports and preparing for an upcoming board meeting, but Lily's hospitalization forced her to cancel her appointments and work from the hospital room instead, as she attempted to focus on spreadsheets and presentations while watching her daughter sleep. She found herself thinking more deeply about the patient experience with chronic respiratory conditions. The Innovation Summit had been mentioned in several industry publications that Dr. Chen read regularly, but she typically avoided such events, preferring more focused conferences specifically related to medical device development. However, her assistant mentioned that several of their research partners were presenting at the summit, and Dr. Chen decided it might be worth making a brief appearance to maintain those relationships. Dr. Chen arrived at the convention center late in the afternoon, after ensuring that Lily was stable and comfortable at home with a babysitter. She moved efficiently through the expo hall, stopping at booths operated by companies and research institutions she already knew. Her conversations focused on existing partnerships and potential collaboration opportunities within her company's established areas of expertise. As Dr. Chen made her way toward the exit, planning to return home to check on Lily, she noticed a small crowd gathered around a modest table near the back corner of the expo hall. Unlike the polished corporate displays she had been visiting, this booth appeared to be operated by a single individual who was demonstrating some kind of medical device to an interested audience. Curious about what could be drawing attention to such an unprofessional-looking display, Dr. Chen moved closer to observe. She arrived just as Marcus was explaining how his device had helped his daughter Emma manage her asthma more effectively over the past year. He demonstrated how the smartphone app tracked usage patterns and provided detailed reports that could be shared with healthcare providers. Dr. Chen found herself genuinely intrigued by the concept. The device addressed exactly the kind of patient compliance issues she had been thinking about while sitting in the hospital with Lily. The real-time feedback system could potentially solve the problem of patients using their inhalers incorrectly, while the usage tracking could provide valuable data for optimizing treatment plans. However, Dr. Chen's initial interest was tempered by her professional skepticism. The device appeared to be a rough prototype, and the presenter clearly lacked the medical or engineering credentials she expected from serious innovators. When Marcus mentioned that he was a maintenance technician who had developed the device in his garage, Dr. Chen's doubts increased significantly. After watching the demonstration for several minutes, Dr. Chen approached Marcus and asked a few pointed questions about clinical testing, regulatory approval processes, and intellectual property protection. Marcus answered honestly, explaining that he had not yet conducted formal clinical trials but had documented positive results with several patients through his daughter's doctor. He acknowledged that he was still learning about FDA requirements and patent applications. Dr. Chen's questions revealed the significant gaps between Marcus's current situation and the standards required for medical device commercialization. While she found the concept interesting, the lack of proper development processes and clinical validation made it impossible for her company to consider any kind of partnership. She thanked Marcus for the demonstration and continued toward the exit, dismissing the encounter as an example of well-intentioned but impractical amateur invention. Marcus noticed Dr. Chen's interest during her questions and was disappointed when she left without providing any contact information or expressing interest in further discussions. However, he was encouraged by the fact that someone with obvious medical industry expertise had spent time evaluating his device and asking detailed questions about its functionality. The remainder of the Innovation Summit provided Marcus with valuable learning experiences and several new contacts who offered advice about navigating the medical device development process. While no one offered immediate funding or partnership opportunities, Marcus felt more confident about the potential market for his invention and more informed about the steps needed to bring it to market properly. Dr. Chen returned home that evening to find Lily feeling much better but still concerned about managing her medications correctly. As she helped her daughter organize her daily pills and reviewed proper inhaler technique for the 100th time, Dr. Chen found herself remembering the device demonstration she had witnessed at the summit. Despite her professional reservations about the inventor's background and approach, she could not stop thinking about how such a system might have prevented Lily's recent emergency room visit. The irony was striking. Dr. Chen ran a company that could potentially develop and market exactly the kind of device that Marcus had created, but the conventional business development processes that had made her company successful also prevented her from recognizing the value of innovations that emerged from unconventional sources. Meanwhile, Marcus possessed a working solution to a problem that was affecting Dr. Chen's family directly, but lacked the resources and connections needed to bring his invention to the people who could benefit from it most. 6 months after the Innovation Summit, Marcus Thompson's financial situation had reached a breaking point. The costs of patent applications, prototype development, and attempts to meet regulatory requirements had drained his savings and forced him to take on additional debt. Despite working extra shifts whenever possible, he was struggling to keep up with basic expenses while continuing to invest in his invention. Emma's condition had remained stable thanks to the device, But Marcus faced an agonizing decision about whether to continue pursuing his dream of bringing the invention to market. Several potential investors had expressed interest after hearing about his device through word-of-mouth referrals, but all of them wanted to see clinical data and regulatory approvals that would require funding he did not have. The stress was taking its toll on Marcus's health and his relationship with Emma. He was working nearly 70 hours per week between his 2 regular jobs and spending his remaining time on patent paperwork and prototype refinements. Emma, now 9 years old, had begun asking why her father was always tired and whether they would have to move to a smaller apartment because of money problems. Dr. Jennifer Walsh continued to advocate for Marcus's invention within medical circles, sharing data from her informal observations with colleagues at conferences and professional meetings. Her efforts had generated interest among several pediatric pulmonologists who were impressed by the potential benefits of real-time inhaler monitoring. However, none of these physicians had the authority or resources to support formal clinical trials or commercial development. Meanwhile, Dr. Sarah Chen was experiencing her own escalating challenges with Lily's asthma management. Despite access to the most advanced medical care and newest inhaler technologies, Lily continued to struggle with medication adherence and proper technique. Her condition had worsened over the winter months, requiring 3 additional emergency room visits and causing her to miss significant time from school and sports activities. The impact on Dr. Chen's professional life was becoming more noticeable. She had missed several important board meetings due to Lily's medical emergencies and found herself distracted during crucial business discussions. Her company's leadership team was beginning to express concerns about her availability and focus, though they remained supportive of her family situation. Dr. Chen had tasked her research and development team with exploring smart inhaler technologies, hoping they could develop solutions similar to what she had observed at the Innovation Summit. However, the company's existing development processes were designed for multi-year projects with substantial budgets and regulatory oversight. The R&D team estimated that developing a smart inhaler system from scratch would require at least 3 years and several $1 million in development costs. The turning point came during what should have been a routine family vacation. Dr. Chen had planned a long weekend ski trip with Lily, hoping to spend quality time together away from work pressures and medical concerns. They had chosen a resort at moderate altitude, and Dr. Chen had consulted with Lily's pulmonologist about adjusting her medications for the mountain environment. On their second day at the resort, Lily experienced a severe asthma attack while they were on the ski slopes. The combination of cold air, physical exertion, and altitude proved more challenging than expected, despite their precautions. Lily began having difficulty breathing while they were on a chairlift, far from immediate medical assistance. Dr. Chen watched helplessly as Lily struggled to use her rescue inhaler properly while panicking about her breathing difficulties. The stress and physical positioning on the chairlift made it nearly impossible for Lily to coordinate the precise timing required for effective inhaler use. By the time they reached the top of the mountain, Lily's condition had deteriorated significantly. The ski patrol responded quickly, but the nearest medical facility was a small clinic with limited emergency capabilities. Dr. Chen found herself in the terrifying position of watching her daughter receive basic emergency care while knowing that more advanced treatment options were hours away. The experience of feeling powerless despite her professional expertise and resources was devastating. During the helicopter evacuation to a major hospital in the valley, Dr. Chen held Lily's hand and promised herself that she would do everything possible to prevent such emergencies in the future. As she watched the paramedics administer nebulizer treatments and monitor Lily's vital signs, she found herself thinking about the device demonstration she had witnessed at the Innovation Summit months earlier. The smart inhaler system that the maintenance technician had developed could have provided real-time feedback to help Lily use her inhaler correctly during the attack. More importantly, the usage tracking might have revealed patterns in Lily's medication adherence that could have helped prevent the emergency altogether. Dr. Chen realized that her professional skepticism about the inventor's background had blinded her to the potential value of his innovation. After Lily was stabilized and they returned home, Dr. Chen asked her assistant to research the maintenance technician who had demonstrated the smart inhaler at the Innovation Summit. She remembered his first name was Marcus, but did not have any contact information. Her assistant was able to track down Marcus Thompson through the Innovation Summit's exhibitor records and local news articles about his invention. Dr. Chen learned that Marcus was still working on developing his device but was facing significant financial and regulatory challenges. The local newspaper had published a follow-up article about his struggles to find investors and navigate the complex medical device approval process. The article mentioned that he was considering abandoning the project due to mounting costs and his inability to support his family while pursuing the invention. For the first time since the Innovation Summit, Dr. Chen seriously considered whether her company should evaluate Marcus's device despite his unconventional background. The personal urgency created by Lily's condition made her question whether medtech innovations' traditional criteria for evaluating inventions might be causing them to miss valuable opportunities. Dr. Chen spent several sleepless nights reviewing her company's policies and thinking about how to approach the situation. She could not simply ignore her fiduciary responsibilities to shareholders and board members, but she also could not ignore the possibility that Marcus's invention might help patients like Lily who were struggling with existing treatment options. The decision became more complicated when Dr. Chen learned that Marcus was scheduled to have his electricity disconnected due to unpaid bills and was facing eviction from his apartment. His financial crisis meant that he might be forced to abandon his invention entirely within a matter of weeks. Regardless of its potential value, Dr. Chen realized that if she wanted to evaluate Marcus's device properly, she would need to act quickly. However, any decision to pursue an unconventional partnership would require her to convince her executive team and board of directors that the potential benefits justified departing from established business practices. The stakes were high both for her company's reputation and for her own credibility as a CEO. As Dr. Chen wrestled with this decision, Marcus was preparing to make his own difficult choice about whether to continue pursuing his invention or focus entirely on keeping his family financially stable. Neither of them knew that their paths were about to intersect in a way that would change both of their lives and potentially help thousands of patients manage their respiratory conditions more effectively. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in her car outside Marcus Thompson's apartment building, questioning whether she was making a terrible mistake. The neighborhood was far from the polished corporate environments where she typically conducted business meetings. The building showed signs of deferred maintenance and several windows were boarded up. She had left her usual business attire at home, opting instead for casual clothes that would not immediately identify her as a wealthy executive. For 3 days, Dr. Chen had debated whether to contact Marcus directly. Her legal team had warned her about the risks of entering into discussions with individual inventors without proper protocols. Her CFO had expressed concerns about the company's liability if they were perceived as taking advantage of a desperate inventor's financial situation. However, Lily's continued struggles with medication management had convinced Dr. Chen that she needed to evaluate Marcus's device personally, regardless of conventional business practices. Marcus answered his apartment door wearing work clothes, clearly having just returned from his maintenance job. His surprise at seeing Dr. Chen was obvious, though he did not immediately recognize her from their brief encounter at the Innovation Summit. When she introduced herself and explained that she was the CEO of MedTech Innovations, Marcus assumed she was there to serve him with legal papers or demand that he stop working on his invention due to patent conflicts. The conversation began awkwardly, with Marcus defensive and Dr. Chen struggling to explain her unconventional visit. However, when Dr. Chen mentioned that her daughter also struggled with asthma management, the dynamic shifted dramatically. Marcus invited her inside and immediately began sharing Emma's story, explaining how his frustration and desperation had driven him to create the device. Emma was doing homework at the kitchen table when they entered the small apartment. Dr. Chen was struck by how mature and articulate the 9-year-old seemed as she explained how her father's device had changed her daily routine. Emma demonstrated the inhaler attachment and showed Dr. Chen the smartphone app that tracked her medication usage. The genuine enthusiasm in the child's voice was more convincing than any professional presentation could have been. Marcus then provided Dr. Chen with detailed documentation of Emma's progress over the past 1.5 years. The data was comprehensive and well organized, showing clear improvements in medication adherence, emergency room visits, and overall symptom management. While the information was not collected under formal clinical trial conditions, it represented exactly the kind of real-world evidence that regulators were increasingly willing to consider. Dr. Chen asked to see the latest version of the device and was impressed by the improvements Marcus had made since the Innovation Summit. The prototype was more refined and professional-looking, though still clearly handmade. The smartphone app had evolved into a sophisticated system that could generate detailed reports for healthcare providers while remaining simple enough for children to use independently. As Marcus demonstrated the device's capabilities, Dr. Chen found herself thinking about how it could benefit Lily and thousands of other patients. The real-time feedback system addressed the technique problems that caused many inhaler failures, while the usage tracking could help families and doctors identify patterns that predicted asthma attacks before they occurred. However, Dr. Chen also recognized the significant work that would be required to transform Marcus's invention into a commercially viable medical device. The prototype would need extensive testing, regulatory approval, manufacturing optimization, and clinical validation. These processes typically required millions of dollars and teams of specialized professionals. Working over several years, Marcus was honest about his financial situation and his growing doubts about continuing to pursue the invention. He showed Dr. Chen the stack of patent applications, regulatory research, and rejection letters that represented months of effort and thousands of dollars he could not afford to spend. He explained that he was considering selling his intellectual property to pay off debts and focus on providing stability for Emma. Dr. Chen listened carefully to Marcus's story, recognizing both the potential value of his invention and the desperation of his circumstances. She realized that any business arrangement would need to address his immediate financial needs while also protecting her company's interests and ensuring proper development of the device. After spending nearly 2 hours in Marcus's apartment, Dr. Chen proposed an initial arrangement that surprised both of them. Instead of a traditional licensing agreement or acquisition, she suggested that MedTech Innovations hire Marcus as a consultant while providing immediate financial support for his family's basic needs. This approach would allow the company to evaluate his invention thoroughly, while ensuring that Marcus could continue working on its development. The proposal was unconventional by corporate standards, but Dr. Chen justified it as a limited research investment rather than a major business commitment. She explained that the company would provide Marcus with a monthly retainer, sufficient to cover his rent and basic expenses, while their technical teams evaluated his device's commercial potential. If the evaluation proved positive, they could negotiate a more substantial partnership agreement. Marcus was initially skeptical of the offer, having learned to be wary of promises that seemed too good to be true. However, Dr. Chen's willingness to visit his home and engage with Emma personally suggested that her interest was genuine rather than exploitative. The immediate financial relief would allow him to avoid eviction and focus entirely on developing his invention rather than working 2 jobs to survive. Dr. Chen spent the following week convincing her executive team to approve the consulting arrangement. She framed it as a low-risk research investment that could provide valuable insights into smart inhaler technology, regardless of whether Marcus's specific device proved commercially viable. The monthly cost was minimal compared to the company's typical R&D expenses, and the arrangement could be terminated quickly if the evaluation revealed insurmountable problems. The breakthrough moment came when Dr. Chen arranged for Lily to meet Emma and see the device in action. The 2 girls connected immediately, sharing stories about their experiences with asthma and the challenges of managing medications while trying to participate in normal childhood activities. Lily's excitement about the possibilities offered by Emma's device helped Dr. Chen overcome her remaining doubts about pursuing the partnership. Within 2 weeks of Dr. Chen's initial visit, Marcus had signed a consulting agreement with MedTech Innovations and received his first monthly payment. The immediate relief from financial stress allowed him to quit his evening job and devote those hours to working with the company's technical team on refining his invention. The collaboration began with comprehensive testing of Marcus's prototype by MedTech Innovations engineering team. While they identified several areas that needed improvement, They were impressed by the sophistication of his basic design and the effectiveness of his smartphone application. The device addressed real clinical needs in ways that the company's existing products could not match. Marcus found himself working with PhD engineers and medical device specialists who helped him understand the regulatory requirements and manufacturing standards necessary for commercial success. Rather than dismissing his unconventional background, the team appreciated his practical insights into patient needs and his creative problem-solving approaches. Dr. Chen watched the collaboration with growing optimism, recognizing that Marcus's invention might represent exactly the kind of innovation her company needed to maintain its competitive advantage. More importantly, she could see how the device might help Lily and countless other patients manage their conditions more effectively, potentially preventing the kind of medical emergencies that had terrified her family. 18 months after Dr. Sarah Chen first visited Marcus Thompson's apartment, the FDA approval letter arrived at MedTech Innovations on a Tuesday morning that would change everything. The Smart Breath Monitoring System, as it had been officially named, had successfully completed all required clinical trials and regulatory reviews. Marcus stood in Dr. Chen's office holding the letter with trembling hands, while Emma bounced excitedly beside him, finally understanding that her father's invention would soon help children all over the country. The journey from prototype to approved medical device had been filled with challenges that tested both Marcus's determination and Dr. Chen's faith in unconventional partnerships. The initial engineering review had revealed that Marcus's homemade prototype needed significant modifications to meet manufacturing standards and regulatory requirements. However, his core innovations, the sensor technology and smartphone application, proved to be remarkably sophisticated and effective. Marcus had thrown himself into the development process with the same passion that had originally driven him to create the device for Emma. Working alongside MedTech Innovations engineering team, he learned about injection molding, wireless communication protocols, and FDA documentation requirements. His practical insights into patient needs often led the team to solutions that purely technical approaches might have missed. The clinical trials had been particularly meaningful for Marcus, as he witnessed firsthand how his invention helped dozens of children and their families. The study results exceeded everyone's expectations, showing significant improvements in medication adherence, proper inhaler technique, and overall asthma management among participants. Emergency room visits decreased by 47% among patients using the Smart Breath system, while patient satisfaction scores reached levels rarely seen in chronic disease management studies. Dr. Chen had navigated her own challenges in defending the unconventional partnership. To her board of directors and shareholders, some board members had initially questioned the wisdom of working with an inventor who lacked traditional credentials, particularly when the company could have developed similar technology through established research channels. However, the clinical trial results and the speed of development had vindicated her decision to pursue the partnership. The personal impact on both families had been profound. Lily Chen had been among the first patients to use the refined prototype during beta testing, and her asthma management had improved dramatically. She had not experienced a single emergency room visit in over 8 months, the longest period of stability since her diagnosis. More importantly, Lily had regained confidence in her ability to participate fully in sports and social activities without fear of sudden asthma attacks. Emma Thompson had become something of a celebrity within the pediatric respiratory medicine community. As doctors and researchers learned about her father's invention through her story, she had spoken at several medical conferences alongside Marcus, explaining how the device had changed her daily life and describing what features were most helpful from a patient's perspective. Her articulate presentations had often been more persuasive than technical demonstrations in convincing healthcare providers to support the Smart Breath system. The financial transformation for Marcus's family had been equally dramatic. His consulting fees from MedTech Innovations had grown substantially as his role in the project expanded, and he now held a significant equity stake in the Smart Breath product line. More importantly, he had been able to leave his maintenance job and focus entirely on medical device development, discovering a new career path that combined his mechanical skills with his passion for helping patients. Dr. Chen had restructured Marcus's role within the company, creating a new position that recognized his unique combination of practical innovation and patient advocacy. As Director of Patient-Centered Innovation, Marcus led a team focused on identifying unmet medical needs and developing solutions from the patient's perspective. This approach had already generated several promising new product concepts that the company was beginning to explore. The launch strategy for the Smart Breath system reflected lessons learned from Marcus's original struggles to gain recognition for his invention. Rather than relying solely on traditional medical device marketing channels, MedTech Innovations partnered with patient advocacy groups and created educational programs that emphasized real-world benefits for families dealing with chronic respiratory conditions. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the pulmonologist who had first supported Marcus's work, became the chief medical advisor for the Smart Breath launch. Her informal study data from years earlier had evolved into comprehensive research demonstrating the device's effectiveness in clinical practice. She led training programs for healthcare providers and helped develop guidelines for integrating smart inhaler technology into standard asthma management protocols. The media attention surrounding the Smart Breath approval focused heavily on Marcus's journey from desperate single father to successful medical device inventor. However, Marcus consistently emphasized that his story represented broader possibilities for innovation when companies were willing to look beyond traditional sources of research and development. He advocated for programs that would help other patient inventors navigate the complex path from prototype to approved medical device. Dr. Chen used her platform as a successful CEO to promote changes in how the medical device industry evaluated potential innovations. She spoke at industry conferences about the importance of considering inventions that emerged from patient needs rather than academic research, arguing that the most valuable medical devices often came from people who understood healthcare challenges from personal experience. The success of the Smart Breath system had implications that extended far beyond respiratory medicine. Other medical device companies began establishing programs to identify and support patient inventors, recognizing that some of the most innovative solutions might come from unconventional sources. The FDA also took note of the Smart Breath development process, using it as a model for how real-world evidence could supplement traditional clinical trials in evaluating new medical technologies. As the Smart Breath system became available in hospitals and pharmacies across the country, Marcus and Dr. Chen received thousands of messages from families whose lives had been changed by the device. Parents reported feeling more confident about managing their children's asthma, while patients themselves appreciated the guidance and feedback that helped them use their medications more effectively. Emma Thompson, now 11 years old, had not experienced a serious asthma attack in over 2 years. She had returned to playing soccer and had even joined her school's track team, achievements that would have seemed impossible during the frightening years before her father's invention. She often told people that her father had not just created a medical device, but had given her the freedom to be a normal kid who happened to have asthma, rather than an asthma patient who occasionally got to be a kid. The partnership between Marcus and Dr. Chen had evolved into a genuine friendship based on shared experiences as parents dealing with childhood, chronic illness, and mutual respect for each other's contributions to improving healthcare. They continued to work together on new innovations, always keeping patient needs at the center of their development process. Looking back on the journey from his garage workshop to FDA approval, Marcus often reflected on how close he had come to giving up on his invention. The support he had received from Dr. Chen and MedTech Innovations had made the difference not just for his family, but potentially for thousands of patients who would benefit from the Smart Breath system. His story had become a testament to the power of persistence, the importance of patient-centered innovation, and the possibilities that emerged when people were willing to look beyond conventional approaches to healthcare challenges. The Smart Breath monitoring system represented more than just a successful medical device. It embodied a new model for healthcare innovation that honored both rigorous scientific standards and the insights that came from lived patient experience. For Marcus Thompson, it proved that a single father's love for his daughter could indeed change the world, one breath at a time.